let's talk about the mutual busts. You guys both gave me a long list of busts. There were 4 of them that showed up on both of your bust lists. And 2 of them are Seahawks, and 2 of them are tight ends, Ken Walker and DK Metcalf. Now, Dave was using half PPR ADP on Fantasy Pros. Heath was using full PPR, which is good. We can give you perspective on both. I'll just tell you this. If you toggle between half PPR and full PPR, you're going to see running backs going a lot earlier in half PPR. You're going to see wide receivers going earlier in full PPR. And Ken Walker is RB16 or RB17 on either format. He's 37th in half PPR overall. He's 47th overall in full PPR. And here are the players that he's going ahead of. In half PPR, Ken Walker is going ahead of Aaron Jones, Dameon Pierce, and Miles Sanders. In full PPR, Ken Walker is going ahead of 2 of those 3, Miles Sanders and Dameon Pierce, but not ahead of Aaron Jones. Let's call him a round 4 pick. Early round 4 in half PPR, late round 4 in full PPR. Dave, he's a mutual bust. Ken Walker, we see in our consensus rankings, we have him as RB26, not RB16 or 17. So your thoughts?
We have been wringing our hands of Kenneth Walker since the NFL draft because of what the Seahawks have done. And there's been absolutely nothing this summer to make us think otherwise, that Kenneth Walker is going to shock us and be a league winner. He does have league winning upside in his profile. Okay. Fast running back, certainly somebody who can make big plays. We saw that last year. I just don't know how many opportunities he's going to get from game to game. He'll get more than a token few, but I think we're looking at a Seahawks offense that's going to throw the ball more than we've ever given them credit for. This is a team that on first and second downs, they've given their running back carries anywhere from 18 to 18 and a half carries per game on average. I think that number dwindles. I think the receptions dwindle specifically for Walker because Charbonnet was drafted to the team, because Smith-Njigba was drafted to the team. So it becomes a number crunch for him. I like him better in non-PPR because I think that he'll be able to at least get you, maybe 1,200 total yards. That's still pretty good, but I don't think he's going to get a ton of touchdowns. And it really caps his upside in full PPR because I don't even know if he's catching 20 passes this year. Great player, tough situation. I would take him in round 5 at the absolute earliest.
Yeah, I think we even have a little bit, at least, of question about the great player part. We know he's a great player in terms of making big plays, but that's pretty much all that he was great at last year. He was absolutely terrible in terms of receiving work, and not good in terms of the number of his carries that went for 1 yard or fewer. He was really, really good at making the big plays. And then the team went and drafted a second-round running back that is better, profiles as being better than him in the 2 areas where he struggled last year.
Would you guys take all 3 of the? I know you take Aaron Jones over him. Would you take Miles Sanders and Dameon Pierce over him?
For sure.
By a lot.
Pierce, you expecting more catches? Who catches more passes, Pierce or Walker?
Pierce.
Dameon Pierce. Pierce might have more touchdowns too.
I would just like to that explosive run rate thing, and right. So he was this boomer bust running back, as Heath mentioned. He made a lot of big plays. He also had a lot of carries for 0 or negative yards. He was one of the worst in the NFL in that. But it's really an interesting stat because there are a lot of great running backs that are low in that metric. If I could, like Dalvin Cook was. Let's see, who else?
Now, has Dalvin Cook been historically, or he was last year when his efficiency fell a little bit?
This is not the list that I am looking for. Jonathan Taylor has been on that list toward the bottom. Let's see. Okay. ETN, not much better than him. Alexander Madison, for what it's worth, didn't have a ton of carries. Was worse than Ken Walker here. DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Tony Pollard. They were all, below average in that. They weren't as bad as Ken Walker, but Travis Etienne basically was.
I think Etienne and DeAndre Swift both makes that is, like, the Chubb one surprises me, and I'd be curious if that was a 1-year thing or if that's happened throughout his career, and that would give me some pause. But like the Etienne Swift Walker comparison as runners, fits perfectly with the way I view those guys. The difference is that I think both ETN and DeAndre Swift can do things in the passing game.
All right. Let's go to DK Metcalf then. And he's a round 3 pick. He's wide receiver 15 in half PPR and full PPR. And he's going ahead of Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley. He's going ahead of Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones. And in full PPR, he's going ahead of all of those players and also Jahmyr Gibbs, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. So when would you guys feel comfortable drafting DK Metcalf? Heath, you can start.
I would feel comfortable with him in the middle of round 5. I like him a little bit better as a wide receiver in non-PPR and half PPR than I do in full PPR, but he falls behind more running backs in that format. He is a borderline number 2 wide receiver. I think it's Jamie who always says there's actually 30 number 2 wide receivers. And so if we have a guy ranked 30th, that doesn't mean that we don't think he's a number 2. I think Metcalf is a number 2. The problem is that he's not like, he's had basically one season where he outperformed this draft cost. He's been in a dead heat with Tyler Lockett in terms of fantasy production. And they just added a guy in JSN who might, and I think if everything goes as planned, will be a better target earner than DK Metcalf. I would expect an efficiency spike from him. I would expect that his red zone production bounces back, but I do think the targets fall off. And I think by the end of year, there's a risk that JSN's the number 1 wide receiver in this offense.
Oof. I have a hard time loving DK Metcalf even in round 4 when Tyler Lockett's outproduced him in PPR and non-PPR on a per game basis each of the last 2 years. And now they're adding Smith-Njigba into the mix. So you need a hyper efficient year from DK Metcalf for him to pay off. And could it happen? It would need to be like one of the most efficient years ever, because I agree with Heath. I think there's a target dip coming for sure for DK Metcalf. Where I don't agree with Heath is where to take him. I would still go a little bit earlier than the middle of round 5, but we're splitting hairs. I think he's going to be one of the most overdrafted and underproducing receivers in fantasy this year. He hasn't even gotten over 14 PPR points per game each of the last 2 years.
Yeah, he was playing through a foot injury and a Russell Wilson injury 2 years ago. I have made that excuse for him. He needed off-season surgery. Like I said,
what's the excuse for last year?
There is none. There is none.
And I don't know that he needs an excuse. Like, he's got 4 seasons in the NFL. 3 of those seasons, he averaged between 56 and 62 yards per game.
Okay, but I'm not really counting his rookie year because that's actually a good rookie year. He had a 900-yard rookie season. That's really good. His second year was outstanding. I don't want to just repeat everything I said last week. His second year was outstanding. That was great. His 4th year sucked. His 3rd year was interesting. His 3rd year, he got off to a great start. Then Russell Wilson got hurt. Then DK Metcalf got hurt and played through it. I could have made excuses for him. I can't make any excuses for him after last year. So looking at the ADP, look at the consensus rankings that we have on our YouTube channel right now. We have Hopkins, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, Drake London, DK Metcalf, and then Amari Cooper. Specifically with Kirk and London, you could have similar concerns about a new guy coming in for Jacksonville, Bijan coming in for Atlanta, and of course London doing everything without Kyle Pitts at the end of last season. So I have a hard time with that, with London and Kirk versus Metcalf. How do you rank those 3 guys?
London, Kirk, and Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love any of the 3. I'm probably looking for all 3 of those guys in like round 5 or round 6, somewhere in that type of range. I'll take Metcalf at the top of that group, followed by London and Kirk.
And I think what you see when you look at this list, and I know the people listening can't see it, but you said Hopkins, Jeudy, Kirk, London, Metcalf, and then it's Cooper, McLaurin, Johnson, Godwin, Dotson. Like, we all have 5 of those guys ahead of DK Metcalf. It's just not the same 5 guys. And that's why, like, I'm the guy who has pushed Christian Kirk up ahead of DK Metcalf, but I've got Jerry Jeudy like 4 spots behind DK Metcalf. The reason that Metcalf belongs in that range is because they do have the similar concerns.
Yeah.
I think, like, we're all expecting Trevor Lawrence to throw 75 more passes than Geno this year. And I just think that Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk are probably going to be pretty close in targets, but I don't think there's a third guy like Tyler Lockett or JSN, whichever one.
You have 5 of these guys ahead of Metcalf. You don't have.
Well, there's 4 in the consensus rankings.
Right on the
Give us the names again. We should tell everybody.
Okay, Hopkins ahead of
For
Metcalf.
sure. In PPR. This is in PPR.
Right.
Mhm.
PPR, I would rather have Hopkins.
Judy.
Rather have Judy in PPR.
Not you, Heath, though.
No.
Kirk.
I have Kirk ahead.
I do not. I've got Metcalf ahead.
Drake London.
I have London ahead.
I have Metcalf ahead.
Cooper.
Cooper's 1 spot ahead of DK for me.
I have Cooper behind.
McLaurin.
1 spot behind DK.
I have McLaurin ahead of DK.
Wow. Okay. Deontay.
For sure, Deontay.
I'm out on Deontay.
All right. That's fine. Let's go to our tight ends on the mutual bust list. George Kittle and Darren Waller. Kittle is his ADP is really surprising to me.
Yes.
He is tight end 4, and he of course has been a top 3 tight end per game. I think it's 5 years in a row. But he's tight end 4, and he's in between TJ Hawkinson and then a group of 3 who have basically the same exact ADP: Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, and Dallas Goedert. But yeah, okay, so let's make it. I think we've made our thoughts clear on Kittle, but make him again, I suppose. Where should he go, Dave? Where should he be among tight ends?
He's in that 3rd tier of tight ends, and still in my rankings, he's 6th among tight ends, but I wouldn't take him in round 5 or round 6, maybe in round 7. I would consider him. I don't like what happened last year when everybody was healthy and Purdy was under center and McCaffrey was there. Really was McCaffrey coming to San Francisco that started to hurt George Kittle when everybody was healthy. And then when Debo was out, Kittle's numbers went crazy, tons of touchdowns. That's what you have to hope for if you draft George Kittle, is that he scores a bunch of touchdowns. In his 5 games, this includes the playoff games, 2 of the playoff games, we're not counting the Philadelphia game where Brock Purdy got hurt. 5 games where everybody's healthy in the San Francisco offense. He averaged 4.2 targets per game, 10 PPR points per game, 3.4 catches per game. He had 2 touchdowns in those games. Both came against Arizona in week 18. I have to worry about him becoming a touchdown or bust tight end if he's going to continue to see only 4.2 targets per game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else is feeling this way, but I kind of have concerns about Brock Purdy turning back into a pumpkin. And I don't feel a whole lot better that the backup plan is Trey Lance and or Sam Darnold.
It's going to be Darnold. You saw the preseason game, then you know why.
Well, I've seen 5 years of Sam Darnold, so I don't know.
It's great.
I don't know for sure.
If Sam Darnold has beat you out for a backup quarterback job, then you know that you're in trouble. You know your future in the NFL is.
Yeah. Let's focus on Kittle and you guys.
That's the point. Is that if he doesn't have a great quarterback, does that hurt him, or maybe does that help him, or is it something that we can just write off because there's so many other targets in the offense?
I think the only case for Kittle is that obviously he's great, but also we always project the 49ers at the start of the season as if everybody's going to be healthy, but they're not. I mean, they're McCaffrey and Debo. Kittle himself obviously is an injury risk. So I always struggle with that because I feel the same exact way about all of these guys, but there are definitely going to be times when someone's not on the field. So I don't really know how to. I'm not taking Kittle for the most part.
Well, and I think history suggests, with 13 missed games in the last 3 years and Kittle turning 30 in October, that he's probably the most likely of those guys to miss some time.
Yeah.
He hasn't played a full season since
right
2018.
Waller's right behind him.
No, he meant the 49ers guys. But
I thought you meant among tight ends.
No, let's go to Waller then. Why is he a bust, guys? He's got basically, like I said, the same ADP as Pitts and Goddard. They're all more or less tied for tight end 5, 6, 7. We're talking about round 5, 6, I guess. Yeah. All right, Dave. Why is Darren Waller on the bust list?
He's on the bust list because I think he's being drafted too soon. But I would take him ahead of George Kittle. I just wouldn't take him where ADP's taking him. He's 30 years old. He's missed at least 6 games each of the past 2 seasons. Last year, If you exclude week 5 when he had just 8 snaps, his pace in 2022 was terrible. It was 733 yards and 6 touchdowns. It's 9.4 PPR points per game if you include the 53 catches. You have to assume he'll miss some time because he's at that point in his career. I don't think he'll be wasted when he's healthy. I don't think that the Giants are going to ignore him. Daniel Jones is going to ignore him. And he's a differentiator in that offense when it comes to his size. And the film late last year actually wasn't bad for Darren Waller. He was still moving pretty well. I think the Giants are going to be a lot more like focused on spreading the ball around. They were there last year. I think they're going to do it again. Waller might be at the top of the pecking order. He might average 6.8 targets per game, and that's really good for a tight end. I just don't know if he's going to be as effective. And I think he's going to be the guy that defenses are going to take away when they get in the red zone. I think that's who they're going to choose to take away first and foremost on passing downs. So it makes me worried about just how many touchdowns he's going to get. And I'm worried about how much he's going to play this year. And I don't want to pay what the ADP says for Darren Waller.
So how would you guys rank Kittle, Waller, Pitts, Goddard?
Pitts is at the top of the list for me. I'll buy into his upside with a better quarterback. I think it's a better quarterback with Ritter than what he had last year because he was getting open last year. He seems healthy now. Pitts is at the top of the list, then Waller, then Kittle, then Goddard. I would take none of these guys with a top 50 pick in PPR.
Yeah, I don't have any of them in the top 50. I've got Pitts round 5. I mean, it's basically 1 round difference between all of them. A slightly bigger difference between Kittle and Waller, but Pitts round 5, Goddard round 6, Kittle round 7, Waller round 8.
Okay.
Wow.
Let me ask you guys a more general tight end question. I keep finding myself more and more I do these drafts not taking a tight end until pretty late. And that has nothing to do with Kelsey. I haven't been in the Kelsey zone, I guess. But like the picks 6 through 8, basically. But
there's a song for that.
What is the song?
I went to the Kelsey zone. And I think it's a nice range between 6th and 9th overall.
Very good. Dave. Thank you. I'm sure he would agree.
I need Heath's aviator sunglasses now to match the song.
Yeah, I was a little upset. I just kept doing these drafts and I never end up with one of these top 7 tight ends. And then I said, hey, listen, we got to remember great or late, right? There's a purpose to why we keep saying great or late. But I was thinking every league I'm in so far has been either 3 receivers and 1 flex or 2 receivers and 2 flexes. I think I'd be more likely to take one of these top 7 tight ends if it were 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and 1 flex. In other words, if we were getting rid of a starting receiver or a starting flex. Okay. You guys agree with that?
No, I don't know if I necessarily agree. No, I don't agree.
Maybe that's why they are pushed up in ADP, because more drafts are that way. Because I do think it's very likely that they would go earlier if you couldn't start as many running backs and wide receivers.
I think so.
But so maybe I'd be more okay with that. I think specifically with Waller, I think the injury concerns that Dave hit on are certainly worth monitoring. The age, he's a year and a month older than George Kittle. Like he's going to turn 31 week 1, I think. So that's a little bit of a concern. And then it's not just like, I know I get harassed on Twitter because I say Daniel Jones is not a great passer, but like there's been one player in the Daniel Jones era who's had more than 100 targets. Like this, he runs and he's great at it. He runs so much that there's just not as many pass attempts. And those pass attempts are not above average in terms of accuracy or efficiency. And so it's just like, even if Waller's the number 1 target earner on the team, I believe each of the last 2 years, the number 1 target earner has received 76 targets.
I won't get too far into this because Daniel Jones is on someone's bust list. We'll talk about that later. Only
not
thing
mine.
I disagree with. Yeah, no.
That narrows it down.
I think we're going to see more. I think we're going to see more pass attempts. They're going to lose more games this year, and I think they want to be more pass heavy.